Welcome. This here is the business end of my dust collection system. Over here I have my table saw, and hooked up to it is a Thien Baffle with a bucket under it as a extra capacity reservoir for the sawdust, and it's all powered by a run-of-the-mill quote-unquote 5 horsepower shop vac. It works pretty well. I will go over some of the details of how I made it and how it performs. I don't know how well you'll see this in the video, but I'll take apart my Thien Baffle to give you guys a better idea. If I remove the top, you can see that I've got the baffle basically suspended by 3 posts. I decided to make it a little extra tall on the thinking that the larger vortex chamber would create a little bit more of a cyclone type action and maybe give me a little more dust separation. If you look into the pail, I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, I'll shine a flashlight, but there's actually an interference pattern in the sawdust down there. So it's kind of indicating to me that a little bit of air or the cyclone action is making it past the baffle in the Thien Baffle and still making it down to the lower chamber. Originally I had this in a 4-gallon bucket, and I discovered it filled way too fast, and then I put it in this 5-gallon bucket, and that still filled pretty fast, and I welded it to, or I glued it or adhered it to a 6-gallon black bucket there on the bottom, and that still fills pretty fast. If I'm down here actually doing a fair amount of work, I'll fill that up in an afternoon. How I connected the 2 buckets was I basically just cut a hole in this lid up here, and this type of plastic, it's called a thermoplastic, and you can actually effectively weld it. I took out a soldering iron and I basically melted the 2 plastics together. So this upper bucket has literally been melted and welded to this white lid underneath it. And again, if you look down in there, you can see the hole. How I created the entrance, basically I created a paper template that followed this curve, and this top piece is just a half-inch piece of plywood, and there's a half-inch piece on either side, and then on the inside, I don't know how well you can see it, but I've got little corner blocks in the 4 corners of the square to make it a little bit of an octagon to smooth it out, and I think you can see it a little bit better from that angle. And I personally feel, a side entrance like this has got to help the general action of the cyclone and whatever. And again, I'm pretty happy with how this works out, but I still want to get even better dust collection in my shop. Thanks. I've been using this system for a couple years now, and I'm generally pretty happy with it. Usually when I empty the Thien Baffle, it's filled with sawdust, and when I go to clean out my shop vac, it generally has a small amount of the fine sawdust, the wood flour within it. And I have found sometimes, however, that my shop vac has been pretty full, so I think it's possible, and occasionally I overload the Thien Baffle and it doesn't do a good job of separating, and more of the coarser sawdust ends up in the shop vac. But I think if I'm careful with how I manage it, it works generally pretty well, and I'm pretty pleased with it.